Young dynamic speaker, please welcome on stage Simon Kemp. Welcome, Simon. Women go all. There you go. Hey. There you go.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm slightly disturbed by that introduction. I'm going to have to somehow live this up later and pretend I'm not as young as I look. It's a delight to be here with you this afternoon. As we've already heard this morning, today is all about change, and I am really excited to show you some of the things that I believe are really going to change our industry, your industry, and the way that you work. This is about social media, but it's not about social media in the way that you expect. This is not going to be a conversation about technology. This is going to be a discussion about psychology and about doing the things that marketers always should have done. I think that the most important way to preface this session is to say that social is absolutely nothing new. This is not going to replace any of the things that we do as an industry. It's going to make them better, though. It's going to do some of that stuff that Cindy was talking about earlier, where we make more money, hopefully with a bit less work, and also enjoy it much more as well. Just a little bit of context for you to set the scene so that you understand where I'm coming at this from. My name is Simon Kemp. For those of you who are on Twitter, you'll find me as Eskimon. I look forward to seeing lots of tweets from you. Please send me your questions, and please also send me your challenges. When something doesn't make sense, I want to hear about it, and we can have a lovely discussion on social about that, either at the end in the Q&A or on Twitter throughout the rest of the conference. I work for a company called We Are Social. We are a social marketing agency, so we're not about just the media. We're about how you use social to engage and actually bring your brands to life in a digital and a conversational way. We're all over the world. We work with some lovely, lovely clients. And we do what we call building brands worth talking about. And that is going to be a big part of what I want to talk to you about today. But the good news is I'm not actually here to talk about the company. I'm here to talk about the principles behind why we do what we do. Straight into that then. I think when I first got the brief from Swami, it was lovely. It was come in and tell us how social media is going to change the way that we live. It's a little bit terrifying as a concept, but at the same time, I believe that it's going to make things better in so many different ways, and that's what we're going to look at right here. The ones that pull you out the most this morning and this afternoon, please do share them on Twitter. As I said, this is a great way to have conversations with everybody else in the room, not just with me, and also is a really useful bookmarking way for you to remember the highlights of today as well. I just want to get into some context before we look at that psychology piece, though, specific to India. So we've just produced a new report on the use of digital and social media in India. It's available for free to download off the internet. It has all the stats that you need to have conversations with the people that matter about whether you should be involved in digital or not. The good news is it's growing really fast. The bad news is it's still not nearly as big as it should be in India. And I'm going to pick up on one of the things that Cindy talked about as well. There are not nearly enough women in India using digital at the moment. That's something that we need to take responsibility for as practitioners and as an industry, and make sure that this future is evenly distributed and is a future that is available to everybody. The most important number in this one that I want you to look at, ironically, is not the social one, though. It's that fourth one along. It's the unique mobile users, very quickly approaching half of Indian population owning a phone of some description. And that is what is going to allow everybody in this country to access digital stuff. It's growing incredibly fast. I think that's the bit that I highlighted when we had the previous chart, but it's a bit that I want you to take note of as we go into this. 100 million new internet users in India alone registered in the past 12 months. That's quite staggering in terms of just the sheer number of people that are now using this. If we keep that momentum going, this is going to really have massive implications, not just for advertising, but also from the way that communities and societies work. But obviously, you want to know what this means for you. We're quite sort of, it's about social, but it's also, there's an ego aspect to this as well. How can you benefit from this, and how does it help you get more money with less work? 4 things we're going to look at, and I'm going to finish off with a free gift, as it says there. Those eagle eyes in the room jump straight to the bottom. We're going to look at how you disrupt your advertising briefs, how you disrupt strategy, how you disrupt the way that you come up with ideas to bring that strategy to life, and then to finish off with some of the most disruptive thinking of all is how you completely rethink the marketing mix in light of the things that social brings to our toolbox. Straight into them. All set? How to disrupt the brief. And I think a lot of the time when we go to conferences, we see an awful lot of great case studies and really good examples, but often we forget where they came from. We jump straight to the results, and we forget to think about what inspired those results in the first place. For those of you who studied marketing, I would ask you to show your hand, but it's so bright I can't see you, so I'll take it for granted that a good number of you in the room will remember Philip Kotler. You may not know that's what he looks like, but that is a photo of Philip from a while back. If you boil Philip's books down into one slide, and apologies to Philip for doing something so flippant, but the profitable satisfaction of people's wants, needs, and desires. That's what our industry is all about. That's what many of your jobs are about, even the bankers in the room. Somehow, some way, we've got to make sure that we're addressing needs of the audiences that we serve. You boil that down even further. I like to, I'm in social media like Twitter, where everything is 140 characters of wisdom. This is the way that we succeed as marketers. We understand what the world wants, we understand what we want, and in the middle is where we find success. This is an obvious statement of the obvious, but it's really important because we keep forgetting that that's what our job is all about. But I'm going to borrow some Steve Jobs' wisdom here, and he wasn't the first one to say it, but oddly enough, he's the one that most people remember for saying it. People don't know what they want until you show it to them. This is something that we've come to accept as wisdom within the marketing world. But here's the irony about that. How many of us actually know what the world wants? How many of us can confidently sit there at our desks and go, I know exactly what these people are going to buy. If I make it, they will come. The reality is that most of us still really struggle to do that. And that's because it's very difficult for us to find information that fuels even our understanding of people's needs, wants, and desires. And until recently, it was really difficult and expensive in particular for us to be able to do that. We relied on some really quite complicated research activities to be able to actually go out and listen to the world. With social listening, that has changed. I want to hasten to add, this is not something that's going to replace traditional research, and indeed it should complement it. They should work together. But what's really interesting with social listening, the activity of going out and actually analyzing other people's conversations in social media, is that we can start to get insights about what people want. So no more do we have the excuse that we don't know what people want. We can actually start to interpret those conversations and turn them into value for the audiences that we want to serve. If we were to do that properly, there's an if there, but if we were to do that properly, it would lead us to much more insightful briefs. And from the brief comes all the success that follows. This is how you can use social listening with some very basic tools. There are some really good expensive ones out there, but there are also some free ones that do a very good job of getting you started. Not got time to go into those today, but for anybody who's interested, I will very happily share information about them. You can understand who your audience is. You don't need to go out and speak to everybody in India or everybody in the world to succeed. Sometimes you only need to speak to a very small audience, and we'll look at a little bit of how that works through some of the later content in the session. But you can build really rich profiles by doing that. You can read the discussions that people are having about your brand, about your category, about the things that they care about, and you can start to understand what really matters to them. But you can also read the descriptions of who they are. For those of you who have ever written an audience persona, this is Raj, he's 42, he lives, you know how these things work, but if you look at somebody's Twitter profile, that's exactly what it is. But it's a real person expressing their life. And if you do that on a regular basis across lots of people, suddenly you start to understand real people in your audience, and you can track them, and you can do things with them. You can also start to understand what the problem you're trying to fix is. Many of the time, as strategists, for all those brand planners in the room, we love to identify the problem we're trying to crack with advertising. But a lot of the time, we're guessing, or we're going with just one thing. If you're analyzing those social conversations, you can really start to understand the problems because they're the ones that people are talking about. When people highlight them, you know it's something that they want addressed. On the flip side of that, you've also got the benefit. What are the things that people love? What are the reasons to believe that we should be highlighting in our communications? And then the last bit of this is, when are we most relevant? I find it fascinating that in this day and age, we're still interrupting primetime TV content with the same ad 20 times each night for 3 months, and somehow thinking that that is the best time to sell all of our products. We know instinctively that this isn't the case. But we were a bit stuck before because we didn't know when the right times and places might be, or we couldn't reach people in those times and places. That's changed. We now can through digital, through mobile, and through social, and that's what I'm going to show you a little bit about in the third section this afternoon. A really interesting one, though. This is the bit that gets me most excited about it. So in Cindy's sort of ethos of don't just talk about it, do it, I went out and had a look at where you could find some really interesting insights. This is something that I hear from my clients on an almost daily basis. Why the hell would we go into social media? It's just photos of people's lunch on Instagram. It's nonsense. It's a waste of time. Some of you smiling slightly ironically there. I worry about that. I'm going to prove to you that that's not the case. Food is an incredibly big part of social media. We know this. A number of you already tweeted pictures of last night's meals, and you're going to post pictures of lunch later as well. 200 million photos on Instagram alone that are tagged with food. Why, you might ask, but before you ask why, look at what the value you'll find in there is. Here's just a random snapshot that we took of photos. There was nothing special about the way that we organized this. But as we looked at it, we realized that there were 3 photos of burgers within that very small space of time. But what was really interesting about it is that each of those pictures of burgers was different. One of them is of a McDonald's, one of them is of a cafe, and the other one is of a restaurant. Each of them has 2 burgers in it. It's not something that people are eating on their own. Already you start to realize that there are insights that we can draw from these food photos, if you will, and actually start to understand people. So yes, these are innocuous photos of people's lunch, but there's a load of insights that we can draw from that. I'm not going to go through these in detail for you, but if you just have a quick scan of those different things, you can instantly realize that the curious amongst us, those that are willing to take time to understand people and do the psychology side of things, are really going to be better placed to succeed in the future. So social media already disrupting before we even create anything, it's helping us to understand what we might want to create in the first place. Even more excitingly, if you start looking at the hashtag love, there are now over 1 billion photos on Instagram tagged with love. The things that people call out as being important to them. For those of you who want to know what the insights from that are, and understand what they show us about what people want, there's some good news. Grab your phone cameras at the ready. I've got a link for you that you can follow later to get all the access to that. This will tell you all of the insights that we pulled out from those billion different posts and will help you to start making some decisions and some actions straight away. For those of you who aren't fast enough, come and give me a wave at the break and I'll pass you the link. So, part 1, disrupt the brief. You're going to use social insights to identify and understand what it is that people want so that in that Steve Jobs way, you can give it to them and you can both succeed by giving people what they want in a profitable way. Now, obviously, insights only have value if we have a strategy to take advantage of them as well. So straight into part 2, how do we disrupt the strategies that we build out of those insights using a social mentality? Go back a bit to Kotler-style theory to start this off with. The whole point of a strategy is to help us become more effective and more efficient at delivering success for our brands. Fair? 2 parts to that. There's the effectiveness side of things, which is doing the right things, so maximizing your chances of success. And on the other side of that is efficiency, which is doing those things right. And that's about minimizing the amount of resource that we use to bring the strategy to life. These are fairly straightforward concepts, but as advertisers in our classic way, we boil things down too far. The broadcast model that we've been used to for the last 30, 50, however many years it is, it started to disrupt and distort our strategic focus in the wrong way. We worry so much about media costs that efficiency has come to dominate the way that we build strategy. Media owners in the room, do not worry. This is not an attack on you. It's about helping your clients and your customers to use your media more effectively and not just to worry about the spiraling costs of how much it involves of our budget to get into people's prime time slots. And this is the peculiar bit about this. Because of this mentality, we've come to think that high reach And significantly, especially in places like India, a lot of the conversations I have are about GRPs. We still talk about how many people we've reached in a given time period. And we seem to think that that is a good measure of successful communication. It's back to front. We've got really confused in ourselves because we knew what we were trying to do from an effectiveness perspective. We knew how to make it efficient, and then we focused on the efficiency all the time. But attention is not intention. We know this. We know that just because you've seen it doesn't mean you understand. If I start talking to you in Scottish dialect, many of you will see me and you will hear the words, but you won't understand them. Attention has very little value unless things are sinking in and making a useful change. So let's stop mistaking efficiency for effectiveness, because they are not the same thing. Okay? Effectiveness is all about how well we can influence and persuade people, and not just how loudly we can shout at them. So, focusing on what really matters. How do we disrupt all of that confusion that we've got sort of into our habits and ways of behavior? What is it that we need to refocus on to actually get back to success? And this is the important bit. We move away from interruption. The whole title of this presentation was The Disruption of Interruption. Interruption is not the answer. If you go up to somebody who's having a really involved conversation at the break and try and butt in to sell them your business, you're probably going to get met with a few disappointed faces and people walking away. It's the same with our advertising. We need to stop doing that and start finding ways to influence people's hearts and minds instead. But what does that look like when you're a brand, when you're a company? How do you actually make yourself a little bit more relevant in a communications perspective? It was fascinating. When I was putting this together, I did that whole classic thing of looking at definitions, which normally I hate doing, but this is one that really stood out. So I had to share it with you this afternoon. Communication is not about what we say. Successful communication is determined by what other people understand from the things that we share with them. And successful communication creates either a shared understanding or a shared emotion, or ideally both. And that comes down to what advertising needs to do. This is our job. Our task is to bring these two things as close together as we can. I know this is a little bit like teaching you to suck eggs. You should theoretically all know this already, but again, we seem to have forgotten about it. Our task is to make sure people think and feel the things that we want them to as brands. And again, the magic of social listening helps us to do this. So once again, social value comes from the outside in at the beginning and not from the inside out. Social is an interface that allows us to understand people. And we can start to understand that gap that I showed you on the previous chart between what people think and feel today and what we want them to think and feel. Let me give you an example of what that looks like. It feels appropriate that we would talk about Coke and Pepsi in a situation like this because they are the classic example of advertising wars. If you look at these two word clouds, I appreciate it may be a bit small for the guys at the back, but I'll make this whole presentation available online later so you can dig into it in a bit more detail. You can start to see the words that are featured regularly in the audience's organic conversations. And you can start to therefore understand what people think and what people feel about these brands. These are genuine insights that we can start to use to understand that gap and then understand how to close it. Do those words reflect what you want them to? And again, you can do this for almost all of your brands or your categories if your brand is still quite small. You can start to understand those organic conversations and then see what's missing. Is it reflective of what it should be? What's the opportunity that I could seize that nobody else is? So to conclude that bit on strategy, the way you're going to disrupt the strategy is not by starting with how do we shout the loudest, because shouting is not very social. How do you instead work out how to be a much more effective communicator, inspiring the emotions and the thoughts that you want people to have about your brand or about the cause that you stand for? And that then leads us neatly into the third part, which is all well and good. How do we bring that to life? Because obviously, at an advertising conference, we need to actually translate this into some activity as well. The most important bit is, again, to go back to what you wanted to achieve in the first place. So reminding yourself about those thoughts and those emotions that were going to determine your brand success in the first place. And then take that and use it as a refresher every time you look at anything you're doing Don't ask, what are we going to make? Is it a TV ad? Is it a billboard? Don't ask those questions to start with. They come later. It's not what you make, it's what you make happen that will determine whether or not you succeed. So instead of looking at the outputs, like the ads and the media and whatever else, look at the outcomes that you want, because it's these outcomes that are the audience-focused side of things. I want the following change to take place, and I will use the following outputs to drive that. That's the way that we need to start thinking. That's the disruption that is going to take us to success in a world where we can no longer afford to just interrupt people. So I stole this thinking from a variety of much more clever people than me. A good idea can be classified as the activities and the experiences that bring the strategy to life in the most engaging and persuasive ways for the right people, in the right places, and at the right times. This is something we would have all learned in theory classes when we study marketing. But let's look at what those mean from a more active social perspective. Who are the right people? Remember, I promised that we were going to talk about this a little while back. Who do you actually need to engage and influence in order to succeed? If you take the example of getting promoted at work, how many people would you need to persuade that you should be promoted? Is it the entire company? Probably not. Is it your whole team? Might not even be. It might only be one person. And the same is true of our advertising and our brand communications world as well. We don't always need to reach everybody at the first point to succeed. There's lots of different kinds of audiences that we can consider, from the obvious people like your potential consumers and your existing customers, right the way through to communications that are directed at your competitors. Not something that we see a huge amount of, and yet at the same time it's perfectly plausible that we could do something about that. You've then got some of these lovely social concepts like influencers and advocates that you can engage, who will end up telling your story on your behalf much more efficiently than you can do on your own due to media cost, as long as you are sharing the things that they care about as well. So this is what's quite exciting. This is why social and digital are disrupting the advertising world, is that they allow us to really target the people that we need to influence much more efficiently. We can go after that one person if we really want to. But we can also then use those same channels to amplify that story right the way out to millions and millions of people, so that it is not just a single person's experience, it's actually an engaging story for the many. So I have a quick video that I want to show you about how this might work. Are we good to go with the video?
This one's hilarious. I'm out of wheat thins. My life is officially over. Kind of dramatic. Tabitha.
Yes.
Okay, do you recall tweeting, I'm out of wheat thins. My life is officially over.
Yeah?
We got a hold of that. We just want you to be sure that you're aware that we have plenty of wheat thins. And that's for you. That's just a gift.
That is a lot of wheat thins. Oh my gosh.
Everybody in the van, let's go. In the truck. You take care, all right? Come on, boys. Who's next?
Very simple, perhaps a little bit of a flippant example of showing you. They were listening to conversations about their brand on social media. They spotted somebody who was very engaged with the brand, who could help them to tell their story for them. They wanted to engage Tabitha on a one-to-one basis because she was a very strong friend of the brand. But they then created a story about it that they took out to the millions, literally. Millions of people have watched this video on YouTube. It's entertaining, it tells a story, and it adds value in a certain way that fits with what their brand is trying to communicate, that personality and that proposition that they stand for. So instead of trying to reach everybody, our task changes in a social world. We can now go down and influence and reach only the people we care about, and do that very, very carefully. The right times and the right places. This is the one that we've historically had the greatest challenge with. We've always tried to buy media spots based on when the most people are going to be there, but we can change that now. When are you most relevant? And I know this is not new thinking. We've been thinking about this as an industry for a while. But thinking back to that strategy that we talked about before and the conversations that we've had, where is it going to have the greatest impact as a story? Go for context, not for channels. Sounds obvious, but the good thing is that social allows us to do that because we can see where people are. We knew where Tabitha was because of her tweet. We could find her. And this is the way that things balance out. A very long time ago, we already knew that the media was the message, but it's changing slightly now. It's become the media is the messenger for what we want to deliver. So you're looking for those times and places when your value can come to life in a way that has the greatest impact and value for your audience. And it's that high value bit that we're looking for. You're looking for opportunities, not just for interruptions. Okay? And the best bit is mobile. I know I'm stating the obvious here, but mobile is a way that we can deliver straight through to the value for these people. I'm up on stage, and I still have my mobile in my pocket, because it is the modern day equivalent of an adult security blanket, the thing that kept us feeling safe as a child. I don't feel safe unless it's with me. It goes with me wherever I go, and it's the same for most of your audiences. And remember that almost half of India's population are using those. So the second bit, just before we finish, you're looking for the interaction via context and not the interruption of content. That's the way that you're going to be able to bring your strategy to life in a way that adds value. But that's the bit we're going to finish on, is the idea of adding more value, okay? What is the best way to engage people in those most exciting contexts? And this is the bit that I want you to take away when you go back to your desks on Monday. We are not in the business of trying to sell people things anymore. We're in the business of getting people to buy into the things that we care about. Just like Cindy was talking about this morning. We've got to move away from advertising and into adding value. There are 4 basic ways that we can add value. We can give people the information they need to make better choices. We can educate them on the skills and the abilities they need to be able to lead their lives in the ways that they want to, whether that's their jobs or their passions or whatever else it may be. We can entertain them and give them the emotions that they care about. Or in a similar sort of way, we can distract them from those mundanities of life, a long wait at the dentist, a bus journey, whatever it may be. These are the ways we can add value to our audiences in those contexts. Exactly how you do that, I'm not going to pretend I have a secret formula for. This is where the creative magic comes in. But understanding the kind of value that you want to deliver is the easiest way to shortcut down to making sure you deliver what the audience needs and not just what the brand wants. So going right back to that Venn diagram that we started with, you need both sides for this to work. Okay? If we do this properly, frequency changes the way it works as well. We don't just need to repeat the same message again and again. The same joke is not funny 5 times. Instead, we can look at this in telling a story over time. Think about the way that people like Game of Thrones or all these big TV series, they tell a story in iterations. They don't repeat the same movie hundreds of times. One of the famous examples of this in the digital world was the Old Spice guy doing those responses. It's just an excuse to show you Isaiah's funky body again. But each of those videos was unique in its own way, similar message told in a different way, and each of those videos, well over 100 of them, had 1 million or more views each. Great. That kind of frequency, really going to be struggling to achieve that if you say the same thing again and again and again. So, by doing those kinds of things, we inspire other people to take part and join those conversations. You increase the reach and the engagement that you were trying to do by interrupting people by adding value to them instead. So that is why this makes much more sense as an approach. You're giving people what they want, and in return you're getting what you want and not the other way around. So as a mantra to take away, your job is not to be serving more impressions. Your job is to make more of an impression. Okay? Wraps that bit up. Identify how to add value for your audience, not just for your brand. The last bit before I go away, though, all of that's great for advertising, but it actually disrupts everything that our brands do as well. It's going to completely change the way we look at all the 4 Ps, the products, the price, the promotion, and the place. If you're thinking about what your product innovation should be, you can start to get ideas from that through social listening. How much are people willing to pay for this? Listen to their conversations about how much they love the product or don't love the product, and you can start to find information for that as well. It actually feeds right the way across the marketing mix, which is really, really exciting because it really does disrupt the way that we work. We can now add that value that people were wanting. I don't have enough time to dig into that. I'm already slightly over time, apologies team. But the good news is, as I promised, there is a free gift. Terribly sorry, Paul, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to give everybody in the room a free book. There is a book on exactly how to do this across the entire marketing mix. If you grab your cameras again, I'm going to give you the link. Okay? And again, if you missed this, just come and grab me, send me an email, whatever it is. You'll be able to download the entire guide to how to do this for all of your brands for free. Woo! Very good. Excellent. Well, thank you very much in advance for your time and your attention.